Hey everybody, Brian Hunt here with you again. In this video, I'm going into why I chose not to purchase the Ronin 4D. So a couple months ago, I rented the Ronin 4D. I rented it from Hababi Films in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, a place where I've rented some gear from before. Great rental house if you need to rent gear in Toronto. They had a Ronin 4D in stock, and I really thought the Ronin 4D was a camera for me, a camera that I could utilize. I shoot a ton of stuff on gimbal. I shoot a lot of sports stuff on gimbal, a lot of outdoor adventure stuff on gimbal. And I thought, man, this is the right camera. I mean, I had the DJI Inspire 1 and the DJI Inspire 2, which I just sold. But the camera that I had in the Inspire 2, I love the image that came off the DJI camera. And I always thought to myself, if they ever came out with a camera besides an Osmo, but you know, a proper camera, I would probably buy it. It'd be something I would really want. I was so convinced that I really was going to buy this camera. I had a lease already signed up and set up, ready to go to purchase the camera. I had already actually bought, and I still have, if anybody wants to buy this from me, the Sony E-mount adapter, or to change out the mount on the camera, because I knew these were hard to get when I was looking at buying the camera. So I ordered this as soon as it came in stock. I was going to lease a camera. I have another video from before that you can watch on leasing cameras, renting cameras, what is the best option. I go through that in that video, but I typically lease my cameras. Again, I go through that in the other video, but I also like to rent cameras or rent gear that's, you know, a substantial amount that you're making an investment in. You want to make sure that the gear is the proper gear that's actually going to serve you well, that you're able to utilize it and you're able to make money from it. And whether that making money from it is from clients paying you more for you to be there, or you being more valuable because you have that gear, or it's making your life better, or you can create better end products because of the gear that you have. And if it doesn't really tick those boxes, it's probably not a good investment. You probably don't need it. Probably better renting at different points. And that, as a spoiler alert, but also the title of the video, I did not buy the camera, and there will be scenarios where I think it would be a great camera for me to use, and I would just be renting it. I wouldn't be using it enough. So let's go into some of those reasons why I think it wasn't a right camera for me. And one of the ones that was talked about a lot in other videos, and I was really like, this is not a big deal, but it was talked about a lot in other videos. I like a heavy camera. I like a heavier camera when I'm doing handheld work. When I'm doing work where I am, you know, using an ENG style camera and I'm using that way without a gimbal, I like a heavier camera because it actually helps to have your movement smooth. I think a lot of you guys know and have probably realized when you're shooting with a DSLR or a pocket cinema camera and you don't have it built up, you don't have that much weight on it, it's actually harder to hold that camera steady than a camera that is a bit heavier. So I thought when people were complaining about the weight of this, that wasn't a big deal until I started testing with it and using it and the way that it works. And I was like, okay, this is getting tiring really quickly. The way that you hold it in front of you. Yes, you could put an easy rig on. Yes, you could do some other rigging. But for the style of work that I do, that time to really get those other things and have that with you when I'm working by myself or I'm working with an assistant, that doesn't really, it's not really a great option for me. In the past, I had a Ronin 2. So the Ronin 2, the bigger Ronin they still make now, and I had that with a ready rig system, and I had that all set up before, and I found that I didn't use it that often in the sense of some jobs where I was hired out just to do gimbal work, or we were shooting everything on it, but for other kind of the Ronin, the RS2, and now the RS3 and RS3 Pro, for my work, I preferred having a smaller gimbal and be able to switch quickly between a camera on a gimbal and a camera on a tripod or a long lens or handheld. So having my FX6, which I'm filming this with right now, and then having something like my A7S III on a Ronin 2. So this is kind of the setup I decided I was going to stick with and keep using because of some other options I have with this. So going back to the DJI Ronin 4D, the camera on it, the image it shoots is amazing. It looks great. There's a lot of different options you can have there, 120 frames per second, the slow-mo that way. Those things are awesome on it. The 4D axis stabilization. So that what the big deal about it is, you know, it's got a gimbal, but it's got that fourth axis and taking out the steps. I thought that worked amazing. Works really, really well. Again, there's some issues with that in the sense of how quick you can move or set it up and how heavy it is. And there's a lot of times where, you know, using my other Ronin, having that here with, yes, it doesn't take out the steps. There's some bumps and there's some movement up and down sometimes. There's other tools you can use to mount these two, like the tilt-a arm to kind of help with that. A lot of times when I'm shooting some things, that doesn't really matter too much. I'm not doing a long enough take with it or a take moving that way, or I'm shooting from something smooth already. Maybe I'm shooting from a boat, from a snowmobile. I'm on a snowboard filming, so I'm already on something that's not stepping up and down. I think that camera, the Ronin 4D, on something like a snowboard or on a bike where I tried using it with, is really hard because of the weight of it. So the fourth axis stabilization does work amazingly well. But that wasn't just totally selling it for me. So I had to weigh those options between using just another gimbal and using this, and would it really make my life easier? Is it going to make the images that much better? If I was doing a long walk and talk, so if somebody was talking to the camera and we were doing a long walk that you would typically do on a Steadicam or a bigger gimbal, I would use or rent this camera, and I think it would work really well in those kind of scenarios. Mounting to a car, it could work really well in those scenarios. Again, I can mount my other smaller Ronin to a car, no problem. I can also shoot with it easily out of the back of a car with the windows open or the door open, which I've done a ton of. So there's a lot of, you know, different versatilities that I have with just a regular kind of smaller gimbal and a camera on it. The other things that people talked about a lot with this camera, and I didn't find the same findings as them. And maybe it was because I was using the Sony E-mount. So Hababi Films rents the camera with the Sony E-mount, and I have a bunch of Sony lenses. That was part of the reasons also of renting the camera, was to see how it worked with the different Sony lenses that I had. It worked great with a lot of lenses. There is balance issues with some of your zooms and some other things that way. So I actually have a bit more options, I think, with just a Ronin, an RS2, an RS3, an RS3 Pro that I look to be getting hopefully soon. That will be even more options of using other lenses that are a little bit longer lenses or zoom lenses. Didn't really have those options on the Ronin 4D because of balance issues. But the big thing that everybody was talking about on this camera was the focus and how good the LiDAR focus worked. Maybe it works way better with the native lenses or the lenses that DJI is kind of selling with it, the ones that you can use with their mount that goes on it. I'm forgetting the type of style, the mount that it is. I'll put that in the video here in the description. But using on the E-mount version, I had problems. I had to calibrate it a few times, and then I just found that the LiDAR, it wasn't grabbing the focus where I wanted it to grab focus. I mean, it was kind of like it was a foot ahead or a foot behind on somebody. And it also, and what I've read about LiDAR is that it doesn't have the longest range. And I think maybe this has got better on their newest one. They're just announced with the RS3. But I found if things were really close, if things were within 5 meters, or I don't know what that is in feet, 30 feet of the camera, maybe 25 feet of the camera, 20 feet, it could capture into something very well and hold it there. Anything longer than that, I had issues with. and it wasn't holding on focus. And it also, when I had selected something to focus on and the subject went behind trees or went behind something else, it quickly jumped over to things. And maybe these are some things in the settings that I didn't have time to play with. Maybe there is more calibration. Maybe people have had better luck with this. I'd love to hear you guys in the comments below. How well did the LiDAR work for you? But for me, I had issues with it, and I found my Sony autofocus, my Sony touchscreen autofocus, which I love to use, works so well, and I can track stuff on a lens that if I'm using a 400mm lens, I can be tracking a subject coming towards me. I can be doing things that way, and it works really damn well. So I was kind of disappointed in that as well. The other issues comes into the recording media and what you can record to. So you have to use either, I think it's CFast Express Type B cards, or you have to use their SSDs. You can't do both at the same time. Or you can go out to an SSD, which I did say in the last video that I was going to do some testing on, but I didn't have time to do that. And I apologize, I didn't test going out from the USB-C straight into an SSD. But you could only record in a few different flavors of ProRes, pretty high. You know, you couldn't shoot any more compressed kind of images if you wanted to have longer rolls with it. There's a bit of limitations that way, what media you can use, what media I already had. So that was another decisioning factor to me. Audio, people had talked about audio a bunch on other videos, and they talked about how they thought the audio wasn't great and that there wasn't options. There is, what I've heard now, some ways that you're going to be able to put an XLR plug into the camera, and you're going to have some more audio options. This wasn't a huge deal for me because I wouldn't see of using this camera really for anything where, like, I'd be also using a recorder, an audio recorder, if I was using this camera, if I needed to capture audio or I needed to boom somebody. I would not be wanting to go straight to camera. Anyways, for the style of shooting I'd be using with this, and I think the style of shooting that most people will be using it, except for now I'm going back on myself, if you're doing a walk and talk with a subject and your turnaround was quick, it might be better to do that audio going straight into the camera and having that, or if you're using it for news gathering purposes or doing a stream with it. I can see those issues, but they are coming out with an XLR adapter, or they already came out with that. But for me, this camera just didn't tick all those boxes, and I was really disappointed. Like, I really wanted just to love the camera and think it was going to be like, in my head, I was like, hey, I'm going to bring this out in a bunch of shoots. It might be the camera I just use all the time. Okay, so, and I had to make that decision and that weigh all these different options, these different things that I was thinking about that we're talking about in this video, and decide, no, this isn't the right camera for me. It's not worth the 14 grand that I was going to have to invest into it to get what I was going to get. I was having some frustrations with it. I'm going to be spending that much money. I need something that's going to work all the time and actually, again, make my life easier, not harder. And is it going to make that much better of images than I can get with the A7S III or an FX3 on a smaller gimbal? No, I don't think so. For me anyway. So I'd like to know what you guys think in the description below. I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments below. What do you think of this camera? Did you buy this camera? Are you thinking of renting this camera? Have you had the same experiences with the LiDAR focus than me? Are you having great experiences with the LiDAR focus and some of the things you would like to share with me and everybody else on how to make that better? I am probably going to get the Ronin RS2 Pro, and I probably will get the LiDAR for that as well, just with the cost of it and where I've seen it being working, and for using on some manual prime lenses. You kind of have to have the LiDAR for make those a autofocus lens. I'm going to do a review on that gimbal and that setup later on once I get it. But thanks so much, guys, for watching this video. If you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. Please think of ringing that bell to get notified next time I upload a video. And if you want to see more content like that, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you guys on the next one.